Just as a disclaimer, we want you to know that some of the movies that we will be reviewing were shot in a different time and era where people of race and sex were not treated equally. We understand this and hope you do too. The movies or anything that happened on the sets are not the views of this podcast or what this show is intended to be all about.
Exactly. And we want to give due diligence in presenting the movie and not the views of the cast or directors or anyone involved. But we also feel it's necessary to let the audience know some of the background information to get a feel for what was happening at the time of shooting the film. Again, we hope you understand that we do not agree with everything that went on, and we just want to give out the information. And with that being said, hope you enjoy the show.
There is a podcast that lies between the imagination of two simple-minded earthlings. Travel with these two longtime friends, Jimbo and 80s E, as they attempt to explore the fifth dimension. Follow along with them as they take the key and unlock the door to the vast space between shadow and substance. This podcast is one of trivia, of insight, and of sounds and ideas from one of the greatest television shows ever produced. You are embarking on a timeless journey. There is your signpost up ahead. You are entering the tragedy of cinema's Twilight Zone.
This is Gart Williams, age 38. A man protected by a suit of armor, all held together by one bolt. Just a moment ago, someone removed the bolt, and Mr. Williams' protection fell away from him and left him a naked target. He's been cannonaded this afternoon by all the enemies of his life. His insecurity has shelled him. His sensitivity has straddled him with humiliation. His deep-rooted disquiet about his own worth has zeroed in on him, landed on target, and blown him apart. Mr. Gart Williams, ad agency exec, who in just a moment will move into the Twilight Zone in a desperate search for survival.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema, the Twilight Zone series. I'm your host, Jimbo. Once again, I'm joined by my faithful cohort and fellow Dogecoin holder, Mr. 80Z. 80s,
hello.
Welcome.
Welcome. Good to see you.
Today we'll be talking about one of my favorite episodes of Season 1, definitely in my top 5. Episode 30, A Stop at Willoughby. This is just a fantastic episode. So, Eric, you know the routine. Let's just go ahead and jump right on in it.
This is a awesome episode, A Stop at Willoughby, the Twilight Zone series episode number 30 in Season 1. It was directed by Robert Parrish, not the Hall of Fame Celtic center, but Robert Parrish, the director. And it was written by Rod Serling, of course. Our featured music by Nathan Scott. And this actually was originally aired, first broadcast on May the 6th, 1960. The total production cost for this episode was $51,501.46. So slightly above our $50,000 running benchmark that we've had for the last several episodes. If we adjust that for inflation, we're looking at $457,621.79 in today's dollars. Just by way of technical specs, we're looking at a 25-minute runtime. The sound mix was mono on a Westrex recording system. The color, of course, was absent. This was a black and white. And the aspect ratio was 1.33/1. The negative format was 35 millimeter. This was a 35 millimeter episode. And the cinematographic process was a spherical process. And the printed format was, of course, 35 millimeter. Jimbo, the cast, take it away, my friend.
Sure. The primetime player, the main character of this episode is Mr. Gart Williams, who is played by James Daly. He's most famous for Planet of the Apes from 1968, where he played Onorous. You had Howard Smith playing Oliver Miserl. He was famous for Death of a Salesman in 1951. This guy is just a great actor. You'll find that out in this episode, too. Yeah. You love to hate him.
Yeah.
Patricia Donahue as Jane Williams. She was in Thriller, not the Michael Jackson video, but in 1974, where she played Elizabeth Lane. Jason Wingreen as the train conductor with the he was in the 1960 movie, or sorry, he was the train conductor in 1960, but he was also in probably the most famous for Airplane as Dr. Brody in 1980. You had Mavis Neal Palmer as Helen. She was in a lot of Hitchcock movies, shorts. She was in The Outer Limits. James Maloney as the 1888 conductor, which was Tales of Tomorrow, which he played Carmichael in 1952. And Billy Booth as the short boy. He was in Andy Griffith. He was in My Three Sons. You had Ryan Hayes as an engineer. Butch Hennigan as the tall boy. And you had Max Slayton as the man on the wagon in Willoughby. So, Eric, there is your cast for this awesome episode.
Yes, very much indeed. A nice cast there. Let me go ahead and give a small synopsis or a plot here. Garth Williams is an advertising agency executive, and he's suffering from exhaustion, stress, and stomach ulcers from the pressures and demands of his raging boss, and that becomes very apparent in the opening scene when we get to it. Traveling to and from work by train every day during the cold and snowy month of November, Mr. Williams falls asleep and dreams of arriving at a town called Willoughby. The time is 1888, and the setting is a warm July afternoon, best described as a Currier and Ives painting. Complete with a bandstand and bicycles and a conductor on the vintage train. The town is as a place that is peaceful and restful, and where a man can slow down to a walk and live his life full measure. Back in the real world, Gart suffers the ordeals of more stomach ulcers and pressures from his employer. After quitting his job and learning that his wife is walking out on him, Gart takes a trip back home by train and falls asleep. He wakes up to find himself stationed at Willoughby and without hesitation walks off to meet the residents who welcome him to a life of serenity. Back in reality, the train conductor looks over the dead body of Mr. Williams, explaining to a man next to him that Mr. Williams jumped off the platform on the train shouting, "Willoughby!" Unaware of what the name means, they watch as the body of Mr. Williams is hauled off in an ambulance marked Willoughby and Sons Funeral Home. So, just a great, this is a great episode. And Jimbo, do you want to launch right into the very first scene? You got that pulled up, or did you have other things? Sorry, did you have other things you wanted to talk about?
Well, once again, you spoiled the ending for everybody, but that's okay.
Well, if you're here by now, you've probably seen the episode. Hopefully.
This is one of the reasons this is one of my favorite Twilight Zones is because there's the double Twilight Zone twist at the end, which was one he dies, and then the Willoughby and Sons on the actual ambulance hearse, whatever.
Yeah.
But this is like Rod Serling's favorite first season episode of the Twilight Zone. So originally, this was actually going to be the one that kicked off the Twilight Zone the premiere. But it would have been a hard act to follow. I mean, this is such a great movie. Or, sorry, TV show. It could have been a movie. I wish it was longer. When you watch it, you're so involved in these characters right at the get-go. So, obviously, this opens up in this executive room board, if you will. You got a bunch of people that looks like they're a bunch of marketing agents. And you got this guy at the head of the table. He just looks grumpy. He looks like he just looks mad. And he's telling you, you're wasting his time. Don't talk to me. Just, I want answers, blah, blah, blah. And you got one guy there. He's nervous. He's twitching his pen or pencil. And, and then this guy's like, well, where's he at? The head guy's like, where's he at? You told me he would be here. He's already late. He's 34 minutes late. He's 33 minutes late. He's 36 minutes late. He's just nang, push. But he's just, and then finally the secretary busts in and says, hey, you got a phone call. And so he goes over and answers the phone call, and you come to find out that this boy that he has been grooming to be part of this company, he had given him a big account. It's like, I think they said $3 million auto ad account or whatever. And he basically says, I'm not coming. I've left. I've taken this with me. I'm going to your competitor. So this guy has to go back into the room and explain this to these bosses. Yeah. And I'll let you take it away from there.
Yeah, the guy's name was Jake Ross, and apparently he was Garth Williams' protege. You're correct on that, and it was a $3 million account. I always make the joke, or I made the joke before that the boss's name is Miserable, and that's short for miserable, because this guy is a miserable boss, and you would be miserable if you had to work for this guy. And I would assume, and I think this is in our trivia section in our notes, that this was an ad agency, like for advertising. It reminded, I think I've said this before, it reminded me a lot of the show Mad Men, I think. And I think that might, well, I'll save that. I don't want to step on Jimbo's trivia for later. But this has like if anyone's seen the show Mad Men, it has like a Mad Men type feel, and it's a high pressure business. And Garth Williams is slowly inching toward the end of his rope. And this guy, Jake Ross, basically has, left him out, to dry. Like, he basically was supposed to bring in an account, and then he sends his resignation letter to the office. And then, of course, that embarrasses Garth Williams, the guy that he was depending on to not only pull the account and didn't pull the account that he was supposed to get, but he left the company or the agency, and then he's taken other accounts with him. So now they've lost even more money, and Mr. Miserable is just, ticked off, of course. And Garth goes, quiet. Well, actually, Miserable is going push, and finally Garth just has had enough, and it's boiling up inside, and he just says, "Shut up, fat boy," or something like that, and he gets real mad. And, go ahead, Jimbo.
I can't imagine telling my boss to shut up, fat man. I know that we would probably be fired in this day and age for saying something like that, and then probably a lawsuit on top of that for defamation of character and all that. But I just, my jaw dropped when he said, "Shut up, fat man." I was like, what is this guy doing? You know what I mean?
You could tell that it just had boiled over to the point where he just couldn't take it anymore. And then, after that, he retreats to his office, and, he he passes through the secretary pool and then goes and sits in his office, and he sits down, and the lighting is very dark, which, Jimbo, you've noted many times before in episodes when the lighting is set in a mood and very dark. And that's sort of the mood we have in his office. And then Rod does his opening narration. And, man, I just think that this opening narration is really one of the best. Like, he is describing Garth Williams in full detail and what he's going through in his life. And I like the line where Rod says he's basically held together. I'm going to misquote it, but he says basically he's held together by one bolt. And that bolt has been removed, and, he's basically, his suit of armor is about to collapse in on him. And that's kind of the way that the episode begins and starts off, and you see the unraveling kind of Garth's life. So from there, where do we go from there, Jimbo?
I believe he gets on the train. This is the first time, first time he's on the train.
You want to talk about that portion?
Right, so obviously this guy takes the train back and forth from work. I don't know if he has a car. It's never really mentioned, but he's famous. He's not famous, but he's known on the train. The conductor knows him, and he's always sitting in the same seat, so I don't know if they had like assigned seats. The ticket was good for this seat back then, you know what I mean? So he is always sitting there next to a window, and the conductor comes by, and they give a little chit-chat. And this is where he just sits back, and he always closes the blind. You can tell it's snowing outside. He always closes the blind, and he kind of leans back, and he kind of, just daydreams, and he falls asleep, apparently. And next thing you know, you hear Willoughby, and it's the conductor is a totally different conductor, and he's like, "Willoughby, what are you talking about?" And he raises the blind up, and it's a whole new setting. It's sunny outside. There's a band playing in the gazebo. There's people walking and all this, and he can't believe what he's doing. And the conductor's like, "This is Willoughby." He's like, "Willoughby?" And he actually steps out. Is this where he steps off and goes out and looks out the back car or whatever? And then
I think he just looks out the window in this.
Does he?
He goes to Willoughby, I think, a total of 3 times. But the first time he's just kind of looking out the window, and he's asking the old-timey conductor, like, "Where is this?" And, he gives a kind of a brief description. And I think, he gets up, and then he sort of, has a conversation with the conductor. And then this is where the conductor tells him this is a nice, peaceful, restful place where a man can slow down and live his life full measure. It's kind of a tagline that we hear in the episode many times. Oh, he does. He kind of runs in between the train cars.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
He just kind of looks outside because he sees the music playing, and everybody's really cordial. It's nice outside.
Then he instantly wakes up, and that's kind of the end of his first sequence. And then he's back on the 1960s train, and he's talking to the conductor, and he says, oh, man, the conductor says, hey, did you have a good sleep? And he was like, yeah, I was dreaming about this place called Willoughby. And he's like, and he's questioning the conductor, like, hey, is that an actual stop? And he's like, no, Willoughby, never heard of that. And, Gart's a little bit confused, and then, he just kind of brushes it off and then gets off in his stop. And then the next scene we have is inside the Williams home, and we meet Gart's wife in this scene, and we meet Janie. And Jimbo, how would you describe Janie?
Oh man, I guess I would call her a spoiled brat / daddy's girl that gave her anything she wanted growing up, was never told no.
Possibly.
Just once doesn't work, and mooching off of her hardworking husband, and probably the pressures of him. Succeeding because she's obviously mad at him because he yelled at his boss and he's probably got fired. But I just made a little side note here. Like, this guy is getting yelled at work. This guy's getting yelled at home. I say, no wonder he has these underlying ulcer issues or a medical problem that may not be known about. I was like, this seems like a really rocky marriage where she no longer wants to be a part of it. I mean, you can kind of get that feeling that she's not there. She's just only interested in the money because she's living this lavish lifestyle, and all of a sudden he's threw a rock into there that she may not get to live how she quite lived as comfortably as she once did.
Yeah, definitely. I think that would be a good description. She really is the push at home, and you described that very well. And, Mizra's the push at work. And I think, which was typical in that era and time for, women not to necessarily work outside the home. But you can tell that she has a lifestyle, aspirations that, Gart really doesn't have. And he describes himself as just being, a regular run-of-the-mill guy, that. And then I think this line is brought up again, where he wants to slow his life down and live his life full measure. And the philosophy of, the cutthroat world that he lives in, he just wants to escape. He wants to escape that world and be who he really wants to be. And he kind of, they have that confrontation where he's just like trying to explain to her that he's not the young, up-and-coming executive anymore that has, a lot of times when you're young, you have aspirations of, making it in business or whatever your career choice may be. You're really ambitious maybe in your younger life. And, as you grow older, other things in life, maybe family or enjoyment or vacations or, money and success aren't necessarily at the top of your priority list. Other things replace those. And that's kind of, that maybe in a nutshell, maybe it wasn't a good explanation, but that's kind of how I see this scene. He's trying to explain all those things to his wife, and she's not hearing it, So it was... Now, sorry, go ahead.
Is this also the scene where he's like, well, he didn't fire me because I've got so many other accounts?
Exactly.
So obviously this guy has pretty much... He said that to his boss, and his boss still thinks enough of him because he has been bringing in so much money, it seems, that he's not going to fire him over a silly comment like that.
Exactly.
So.
He says something like he found it in his delightfully fat heart that he wasn't going to fire me. And the reason why Gart says he's not going to fire me is because, I bring in so much business. So, I mean, it wasn't like Gart was a failing advertising exec. I mean, obviously he was valuable enough to his company that he could tell his boss off, and the boss kept him around because he was a valuable enough asset that he was bringing money into the company. So he did have some measure of success. It just seemed like it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough at home, and it wasn't enough at work. And, he just wasn't cut out for, that life anymore, or he wanted to change. So we leave that scene.
Well, actually, is this where he sits and he talks about Willoughby to her, though?
Well, yeah, he does. in the apartment, he tells her about the dream. Yeah. Gives her a little bit of a description, but I don't remember. Does she like brush him off or?
Kind of. She's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, like basically, I married someone who. What was the line? I married someone who wanted to be Huckleberry Finn or something like that.
Right.
And,
what a jab! She's just poking him, man. Just like, nagging at him, nagging.
Yeah. This guy has no ambition at all, and Gart kind of agrees that, under his breath, he kind of says, well, yeah, maybe you did, or something like that. And then, we're back on the train after the apartment scene. So this is the second time he makes his trek back to Willoughby. And I think the 1960s conductor tells him initially, like, hey, I went back and I looked at some timetables to look for that stop at Willoughby, and I can't find that stop anywhere on any timetable. And then Gart goes to sleep, and he's transported back to 1880 again. And then, Jimbo, the briefcase thing, you mentioned this before when we had conversations about this episode and how important the briefcase is, and you might have it in your notes later. But was there anything that stuck out in this second scene?
I think he actually gets a little bit more of a glimpse here. Is this where they actually call him Mr. Williams? I think did they actually say Mr. Williams? I think a good
so.
day, welcome to Willoughby and all that. But you can just tell he's longing to be there in this. It's like taking him away to the places. And I do believe, is this the one where he actually, is this the scene where he actually tries to fall asleep and he can't? He goes to fall asleep. He's like, "Oh, wait! I got to shut the window for." He wakes up and he pulls down the latch, the window shade, and then when he wakes up, it's an old wooden one, and he lifts it up, and he's back in Willoughby. Now I have a question: is he on this train already, or has he went to work yet? Where he has the two phones?
No, that comes directly after this scene.
So is this? I have a question: is this him traveling back to work then?
I think so. Yeah, I think he's going back on the train back to work. Yeah, I think that's the way that it explains itself. One thing that stuck out though is it seems like when he has this dream the second time that he grabs his briefcase and he's about to make the decision. He's going to get off here at the stop at Willoughby, but the train starts to move. And then he starts yelling, "Hey, conductor, conductor, conductor!" And then he's instantly transported. He's waking back up from his dream,
this is where he looks. Isn't this where he looks down the hall?
Yeah.
Instead of
yelling for the conductor,
right?
And then he's instantly, he wakes up and he's on the train to work again. And so this one doesn't last very long, this dream sequence. And then we go right into he's at the office with the two phones, as you talked about earlier. And he's on the phone, and the pressures are just mounting. Like, he has his secretary coming in. He has his boss, miserable. I'm going to call him miserable the rest of the time.
That's fine.
He's on the phone yelling at him, telling him, I want this presentation to look like this. This has got to look great, and blah, 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 blah. And he's telling him exactly, micromanage him, telling him exactly how to do every single thing. And then there was a problem with one of the photo shoots, and he's on the phone with like a customer at the same time. He's got all this swirling around him, and his frustration is building up, and his ulcer is kicking in, and he just looks terrible. And
his secretary says, "Hey, somebody's here to see you."
Yeah.
So he's got two people yelling at him here, and he's probably got somebody else coming in to yell at him in the office too.
Yeah. The boss, I think, is coming in to see him, and he just retreats into his office bathroom, and he just has to get away from everybody. And then miserable comes up on the mirror in his bathroom as he's kind of looking in the mirror, and it's the push, push, push. You gotta go harder. You gotta win, 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 and push, push, push. And then Gart takes his fist and he punches the mirror and shatters the glass, and then he's really holding his stomach. And now we're coming to like what I think is one of the best parts in the episode. He picks up the phone and calls the operator and asks the operator to get his phone at home, and he talks to his wife on the phone, Janie, and he tells her that he can't take it anymore. He says, "I can't stay here another minute." You could tell that Gart is cracking up, and he's reaching out to his wife. He's hanging by a thin thread, and he just wants any help, any reassurance. And this is the coldest part of the episode. Not to take away from the fact that this is a great piece of acting. I mean, this is just an amazing piece of acting, I think. And I've always heard stories about, in other shows, on how they do the phone calls. You know, like there's no one on the other end. It's basically just you, and you have to act like there's someone on the other end. And I think I was listening to an episode about The Office and how they did phone calls on the show The Office. And so that just makes me love this particular scene even more, that he just does an awesome job. And then the saddest part, you know, he's at the end of his rope and he's reaching out to the last person that can help him, his wife, and he's begging for help, basically, and she hangs up the phone on him.
Well, he says, will you wait for me? Will you be there when I get home or whatever?
Right.
And it's like, click, and you're like, that's cold-blooded, man.
That is, like, so cold. I can't even imagine, like, reaching out to somebody for help, and then she just, nope, don't care anything about him.
Is this where you were going to put in that audio?
Yeah, I'm going to put in it's about a minute long right here. And this is just the actual scene played over an audio. There's no real, I kind of set it up already, so we'll just let it play right here.
Janie, this is Gart, honey. I'm coming home. Will you stay there? I just want you to stay there. No, honey, listen, please. I've had it. Understand? I've had it. I just can't take this another day, not another hour. This is it right now. I've got to get out of here. Janie, will you help me, please? Will you please help me? Janie?
Okay, so we're back on the train after the very dramatic scene. I like how it pans to the picture of his wife, too, as he hangs up the phone. The picture on his desk. That's just
on his desk.
Whoa, gives me chills. So he's back on the train, and then he's conversing with the conductor, and Gart goes kind of through his routine again, pulling down. Does he pull down the shade here? Yeah, I think he pulls down the shade. He takes his nap, and then we're back in Willoughby. And then Jimbo, what happens? Take us.
So this is where
dramatic conclusion.
This is where he's decided, I'm getting off. There's nothing left for me in the real world. Something we may want to touch on real quick before we go any further from this point is earlier in the episode, Mr. Williams, you know, after he calls the guy the fat guy and he goes running into his office, his secretary says, "Is there anything I can get you?" He says, "Yeah, give me a box of razor blades and a chart of every main artery in the human body." So obviously he's already thought about suicide. It's weighing on him. So at this point he's the train. He grabs his briefcase and he's decided, I'm getting off. And he starts walking off the back and he looks down at his briefcase and basically he's like, I'm not going to need this anymore. And he throws it back on the chair that he was sitting in and he walks off and he gets off the train at Willoughby. And these two boys are walking up, the tall boy, the short boy, and they're like, "Hey, were the fish biting today or whatever?" He's like, "Yeah, they're biting real good." You know, he's like, "Well, maybe tomorrow I'll join you." They're like, "Okay, Mr. Williams, fine. There's plenty of fish to go around." Mm-hmm. And he's walking down through the thing. They're like, "Hi, Mr. Williams. Hi, Mr. Williams." You know, and everybody just so friendly. They all know him. And this is where the grandfather clock, I believe, he looks over, right? Mm-hmm. And it's swinging back and forth. Mm-hmm. And you're like, I don't know what's going on, you know, and then you see the chain shift, and it's I guess you would call it like a lantern or a train light outside swinging back and forth. Yep. Perfect cinematography here because it's right in tune with the clock.
Yeah, right in time with the pendulum.
And you got these two guys standing there. It's like, well, I don't know what happened. All he said was Willoughby, and he jumped off the plane. And it pans over, and you see Mr. Williams laying in the snow. So he has jumped from the train to his death. Mm-hmm. And you're like, wow. And then that was the first Twilight Zone twist. So they're like, yeah, we'll take him back to whatever the crematory, wherever you want to take funeral home, and they pick up his body and they put it in this I guess hearse, and they shut the door, and on the back of it says Willoughby and Sons Funeral Home, and that is the second twist because Willoughby was the place of his final destination, if you will, which was the funeral home, or in his mind, the actual place that he ended up. Mm-hmm. So a little bit things about this episode that we'll talk into. One thing that first comes to my mind when I think of Willoughby is the band. The band's playing. They play a bunch of old Stephen Foster songs. And the one that sticks out the most, well, they played Oh Susanna, they played Camptown Races, and then they played Beautiful Dreamer. And I thought that was really interesting that Beautiful Dreamer's playing because he's dreaming when this is all happening. Mm-hmm. It's a place that he wanted to make up in his mind. So I love the use of the music in Willoughby. It sets the tone. It's lighter. You can tell it's a much more happier place than his work was always like dark and gray and getting yelled at and all that. And this is just everybody loves everybody here.
Right.
Do you have anything to add so far?
No, that was a great description. The distinction, I was totally agreeing with you. The distinction between the Willoughby music and, his actual real life was, I love the music part.
Willoughby, Ohio is actually a real place. They actually have a yearly community event, which me and Eric might take a road trip to, involving trains in honor of a stop at Willoughby known as the Last Stop at Willoughby, and I think that would be really cool. The train stations called out by the conductor on the 1960 train are real. At the time of the filming, stations such as Stamford and Westport and Sagatuck were stations on the New Haven Railroad. They continue to exist as of August 2015 as stations on the Metro North Railroad. However, present-day maps, station signs, and conductors do not mention Sagatuck in the station name. The outdoor train station and town square sets used for Willoughby are the same ones used for the opening and closing scenes of The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance in 1962. Okay. Most people think it was on MGM's lot, Studio Lot 3. This is the first episode that includes the series title in its opening narration, so I thought that was really awesome. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Garrett Williams' home phone number, capital C, capital A, and then PITAL 7-9899 is also a legitimate telephone exchange in Westport. Let's see here. The 2000 TV movie, For All Time, starring Mark Harmon, was based on this episode. One of the last episodes of 30-something clearly pays homage to this episode. It has the same title, and in it, Michael experiences a crisis similar to that of Williams, though it does not end tragically. In the TV series Stargate Atlantis, The Real World was the name of the episode. Dr. Elizabeth Weir awakens in the acute care unit of Willoughby State Hospital, a psychiatric hospital. She is told that her memories of the last 2 years off-world was a fantasy and that she had imagined the Stargate project. And Eric touched this a little earlier. The Matthew Weiner, creator of the TV series Mad Men, acknowledged the influence of the Twilight Zone on his work and how Don Draper's life had many superficial similarities to the main character of this episode. Weiner said they paid homage in The Sopranos also when Tony Soprano leaves behind his life in his briefcase. And we've talked about this a little bit too, but this can be considered a sister episode to the episode Walking Distance that we've already covered. They were both ad executives, but unlike Martin Sloane's Homewood, where he actually time travels back to his youth and sees himself, Willoughby is actually clearly a fantasy or a dream. Everyone greets Mr. Williams by his own name, unlike the other one where Homewood, where they did not even recognize Martin Sloane. And he's like, hey, I am Martin Sloane. Here's my driver's license. So that's all I got. You got anything to add right there before we go on to our takes?
Yeah, I just had one little bit of trivia from the book that I have. It says, Mrs. Barbara J. Compton of the New York Telephone Company wrote to Serling, care of CBS Network, making special notice of a mistake she observed in the episode regarding the speakerphone used on the show. It was used incorrectly, she explained. It was shown with the telephone receiver off the hook. The speakerphone could not possibly work this way because as soon as the receiver is taken off the hook, the loudspeaker and the microphone automatically disconnect. I just thought I'd call this to your attention so that you should should you intend to use the speakerphone on any subsequent shows, it would be used correctly. So I thought that was interesting that a telephone company employee wrote into the show to make sure that, hey, make sure you get the technical information right if you do it in any future episodes.
So something I thought that we might start doing, I don't know if Eric went back, since this is our second time recording this because somebody lost the audio file on the other one. We won't mention any names, but I thought something we would do is we would write down our own takes on the episode, things, just little quick pro quiz or whatever. I have mine written out. I don't know if Eric did, but I'll go ahead and let Eric go first. His thoughts, feelings on this episode.
I didn't write any postscripts going forward, but I just usually have my questions and quotations and observations section, and this is just what I wrote down. This is a man who was at the end of his rope. The phone call to his wife saying he couldn't take it anymore was bone-chilling, and if you listen closely, it sounds as if she hangs up the phone on him in his hour of greatest need, which we kind of already talked about that a little bit. And then just this quote, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation, and that quote's by Henry David Thoreau. Just the fact that, Garth Williams was living in this quiet desperation. He was looking for an escape from his life, really, the life that was bearing down on him. And then, of course, we had a discussion about this, and I've had time to think about this question again since we've talked about it before. Was this a suicide on the part of Garth Williams? And, of course, I think it's pretty, I wouldn't say obvious, but it looks like it appears to be a suicide because of that line, the Jimbo, that you quoted before. And then we had some discussion about whether it was intentional or not. And, I'm with you. I think we talked last time. You said you didn't think it was intentional. I don't think it was intentional either. I don't think that he was purposely committing, suicide. I think he really thought in his mind, and maybe it was due to distress, and, he was having some sort of mental breakdown or crack up, that he really thought that Willoughby was a real place and he was just trying to go there. So, yeah, I don't, obviously leaping to your death, he had some sort of mental issue where he thought that, he was going somewhere else. But that's the cool part about the Twilight Zone. It's the converging of the mind and the imagination, and and all those elements are woven into this episode, and that's what makes it so great. And then one last thing I think I wrote down: his boss at work was push, and his wife seems to be demanding of the same at home. And she says, and just where would you be if it weren't for my appetite? Sorry, I had a little trouble reading that. So she was sort of the driving force. She was the appetite. She was the one that was desiring a better life, better social status, better everything. And he was just a guy who just was trying to be a regular guy and just live a normal life. Again, just the dialogue between Janie and Garth in that apartment or home scene was great. And just the notation of the significance of the briefcase, which Jimbo kind of already talked about a little bit, how they paid homage to the Sopranos and how that briefcase, that prop, was important in the shooting of the scenes. But that's pretty much all I had, and I know you had a good postscript that you had written down, so take it away.
Right, and I'm going to try to do this every episode that we do from here on out, just because I write down my thoughts as I go. But one thing to add to you is, I wonder if the ulcers, if they were the ulcers, or they could have been a different major medical issue that maybe affected his brain too, because maybe he was physically ailing, not just mentally, but maybe also physically breaking down, which could come from mental. Sure. So I just wanted to throw that in there before this. So here's the thoughts that I wrote down, and we'll close the show. So I wrote, how many of us have ever felt the pressure at a job? I know I have. I'm sure Eric has. Trying to make a deadline for a project or close a deal worth a lot of money. How many of us have ever had one of those, air quote, bosses? How many of us have wanted to do such a perfect job at a presentation that it literally makes you sick to your stomach, and the thought of quitting becomes more than just a thought? How many of us have forgotten to leave work at work and brought it home to the point where it affected your own family? A stop at Willoughby shows the struggle of real life to a perfect place where time stops, or at least has slowed down, where a man can live his life in peace. In this episode, Rod Serling gives us a look at two extremely opposite ends of the spectrum of life. We have been taught to work hard day after day, and someday you'll be able to slow down and look forward to retirement. Unfortunately, many people never reach that point, or if they do, they are already so burnt out from all the hours that they put in at work that it doesn't matter. They can't enjoy it. Mr. Williams is at a breaking point in this episode, up to the point where he does not wish to go on. Was Willoughby just a figment of his imagination, conjured up in Williams' mind? Was Williams given a glimpse of his own heaven, if you will, where peace and serenity seem to rule in everyday life instead of the hustle and bustle of a 9-to-5 job? Rod has intricately crafted a story that makes you invest in Mr. Williams, given the short time that you've got to know him, even feel sorry for him, with him ultimately reaching the one destination where he desired that he really wanted to go, and that was Willoughby. Serling not only does this, but gives us a double dose of the Twilight Zone twist, if you will, at the end of this episode. 1, Williams jumps to his death after shouting Willoughby on the train. 2nd, the hearse that picks up Williams' body has the name Willoughby & Sons on the back door as it shuts, seemingly to encase Mr. Williams, as signify that he is and will always be in Willoughby, as one door closes of his real life and the other one is just begun in his new life. This is an absolutely fantastic episode and is easily in my top 3 episodes of Season 1. It's a 10 out of 10 for me, and maybe, just maybe someday, everyone can come up with their own slice of Willoughby in the Twilight Zone.
Very nice.
So, with that, I believe this episode's coming to a close. Any final thoughts, Eric?
So what did you think of the episode?
Well, let me tell you, I didn't really care for it.
It was terrible.
But I thought it was fun to actually sit down and write a little of my thoughts on paper, and I think you should do the same. That way we have what we're thinking at the time we're watching this.
I agree. It was definitely, I would agree, 100%, 10 out of 10. It might even, it's a close race between Time Enough at Last and this episode.
For the top spot?
For the top spot, yeah. It's one of my favorites.
Yep. So, well, I think that's a wrap on this episode, and Eric, take it away.
And cut!
Willoughby? Maybe it's wishful thinking nestled in a hidden part of a man's mind. Or maybe it's the last stop in the vast design of things. Or perhaps for a man like Mr. Gart Williams, who climbed in a world that went by too fast, it's a place around the bend where he could jump off. Willoughby? Whatever it is, it comes with sunlight and serenity, and is a part of the Twilight Zone.